Sorry about that. Good evening, council, staff, and those joining us in the council chambers and those joining us on YouTube. I would like to call this regular council meeting to order. And beginning with ask council and staff and those in attendance and those joining us on YouTube to join us in a moment of reflection. And I would ask those present in the council chambers and those on YouTube, as well as council and staff, if you could, during the moment of silent reflection, ask all to consider in their thoughts the family and friends of Tara Moken, who passed away recently after a battle with cancer. Although under the radar, Tara supported many local youth with life issues and was always a shoulder to lean on. And she left us much too early at the age of 38. So, Councillor Raymond, thank you for advising us of that. And so we'll begin the moment now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, and it's the approval of the agenda. And I have a motion that reads that the council meeting agenda for May 27th, 2026 be approved. Mover and seconder, Councillor Raymond and Councillor Larmont. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Any disclosures of interest at this point? Seeing none, as we move through the agenda, should you recognize an interest, please state the general nature thereof and fill out the required paperwork with our clerk as soon as you're able to following this evening's meeting. We have 3 delegations and presentations tonight. I think we'll probably begin, I see we still are waiting for a couple from the Benny's Club, I think.
I believe Kathy is in attendance from Benny's Club. I don't know if you want to postpone the presentation or...
Yeah, so we have Kathy, and who else was coming from the Benny's Club?
I believe Tammy and Cindy.
Tammy and Cindy? Okay. Let's wait. Let's just postpone that until they might be just running a little bit late, and then we'll deal with them as soon as they get here, and if you have to interrupt the presentation. So that brings us to Andrew Marabella and Adam Monteith, Hempson Consulting, the Building and Planning Fees Review. And it's presenting is actually Andrew. Okay. Andrew, if you don't mind, during your presentation, if the other group gets here, if you would mind us pausing you just until we do a presentation, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Andrew Marabella, partner at Hempson Consulting. So we were retained to undertake a building and planning fee review for the municipality. And this presentation is really a presentation of some of the draft results and really intended to form just a council information session before we proceed with any drafting of a report. And there is a formal public consultation process as required under the Building Code Act, okay, which we'll do, as well as kind of with the part of the planning fees is just part of that same process. So this is really kind of in the earlier stage to get council involved, hear the feedback, and then kind of give us some comments for us to take back with staff and kind of proceed forward with.
Sure.
So just in terms of our items for review, we'll go over our brief, like our study objectives and what we were retained to do. I'll talk a little bit about the legislative framework and the parameters in which we're working around. Then we'll get into kind of some of the details in terms of the cost recovery analysis, looking at what the full cost of service is, looking at the revenue side of the equation in terms of what's projected over the planning period in which we're looking at, and then we'll get into some of the full cost recovery rates themselves. We'll cap off the presentation with just a summary of our benchmarking analysis and recognizing some of the magnitude of some of the impacts, some implementation options and considerations for municipal council to consider, and something that we can kind of think about from the kind of the bylaw and implementation stage of this. So generally speaking, the study itself is a quantitative analysis, and we're looking at understanding what the full cost of services for the municipality to undertake planning and application review services, as well as any services under the Building Code Act. As part of that requirement and part of our analysis, separate to that, we do a high-level comparison and review of user fees in other municipalities, primarily just for context to understand the fees that are being calculated, what are charges under the municipalities, where does the township compare, and where can we see some differences within that. The information from both the cost of service analysis as well as the comparative review is something that the municipality can consider, and that information be used to setting the fee rates. You have the ability and the authority to implement the full cost recovery rates that are calculated, or you can implement something lower than that, recognizing we can't impose fees that are higher than the cost recovery rates that we've calculated. So when we think about user fees and this study itself, the definition of a fee is pretty well established, and they differ from taxes in two very important respects. One, the fees are levied for a specific purpose. Any of the user fees that are under the planning and building bylaw, there's a direct correlation in what we call the nexus between the service that's actually being provided and the fee charged. So there's a official plan review. We understand that that fee itself is being triggered by a process for planning staff to undertake that review in order to provide and approve that particular application. So there's a direct, what we call that nexus test that exists between those, and that's really the big test for the user fees that we're looking at here today. When we think about full cost recovery and how it's defined, really among the best practices of the GFOA, so the Government Finance Officers Association, is that we think about the cost of providing services and calculating the rates. The basis for setting user fees is kind of twofold. We have our direct costs, and those are largely for these fees, your salaries, your benefits, those people who are actually delivering and providing that service. And these are particularly labor-intensive fees that we're looking at. So it's the staff that are directly involved in processing it, and that forms the bulk of the cost that's related to undertaking the work. Subsequent to the salaries, wages, and benefits, the payroll costs, we have our operating costs. So there's the support costs that are used by the division in order to deliver that services. We have our asset management requirements. So think about portions of municipal office here. They work out of it. There's a share of that gets pulled into the full cost recovery rate. If there's the building code, there's the vehicles that they use, leasing or vehicle requirements, that's all built into the full cost recovery analysis. The second component is the indirect cost. We call it the corporate overhead. Those include the corporate and administration costs in the departments that support the delivery of services. So council, for example, office of the CAO, the finance department, no one in those divisions are really responsible for delivering an application, but you are responsible for managing the corporation. And those costs are also included in the calculation of the rate. One point to note here, within the direct costs, we also include contributions to a reserve fund, and that's particularly relevant for the building permit fees. As a requirement under the Act, and you have the ability to use a reserve fund, and you have a reserve fund to manage years of fluctuations of permit volumes. You have to report on those reserve funds and those costs every year, so we're maintaining that reserve fund and those contributions to it within this full cost recovery analysis. So within the legislative framework and kind of the governing legislation that we're working with, we have the Planning Act. So that allows the township to establish the tariff of fees for the processing of applications made in respect to planning matters. There's no public process required, but the fees itself can be appealed to the OLT. Council has the authority under the Planning Act to waive or reduce fees on a case-by-case basis at any time. So it's a little bit more nimble than what we call it for something like the Development Charges Act. Your DC bylaw is a lot more static, and you can't really make any changes to it without a formal process. Under the Planning Act, you have the ability to make some adjustments and reductions to those fees on an ad hoc basis. Under the Building Code Act, same process in terms of understanding the reasonable cost of processing the applications or administering the process. Within the Building Code Act, there is a public process required when changing the fees. So this will initiate, once we get a report out, notice requirements and a public meeting in order to change those fees. And then the third component is being the Municipal Act, which kind of provides the latitude for anything that's not really under those two specific governing buckets. The fees itself can be levied under the Municipal Act, and that's where a lot of the other municipal fees are charges that the township does. So looking at the cost of delivery and services, you see on the slide here, we have both costs in the planning and building division. The planning side, it's about $438,000 on an annual basis on average to deliver the service. On the building code side and the building permit side, it's about $467,000 per annum on an annual basis. And you see the bar graph is stacked with different elements of the cost recovery analysis, kind of what I was referring to before. You see the largest part of the bar or the stack is the payroll share in green. That's your salaries, wages, and benefits. Those are the costs that make up the delivery of those services within those two different divisions. And that is by far the largest share, around 70% of the total cost. The next largest share is going to be your operating and capital costs, so the support costs within that division, within the operating budget. And then you'll see your red part, which is your indirect costs, which is your corporate overhead costs, representing around the 15% share of the total. You'll notice on the building side, there's one extra layer, your dark gray box, which is your reserve fund contribution, representing a contribution to the reserve fund, to the stabilization reserve for building, to maintain those services over the period. So really the takeaway here is the payroll and a lot of the costs that are built into delivering the services is just related to the staff, a lot of them sitting in this room here today, understanding this is the work that comes in, the flow of the work, and they're the ones kind of turning out the permits, reviewing the applications, and getting back to the applicants and the one making it through the process. So it is on the ground time to deliver that service. Within the realm of the work, we look at anticipated costs. So try to understand over the 5-year period in which the fees are looking at, are there any additional staffing requirements that are needed in order to manage workflow volumes? And based on discussions with staff, we haven't built in any new FTEs or staffing requirements, so the departments effectively are equipped to manage the level of activity that we're looking at. We have built in costs for future fee studies, so recognizing that a study like this should be reviewed ideally on a 5-year running cycle to make sure that that nexus test exists between your costs and your revenues, and we're recovering our costs. We haven't identified any new significant technology requirements within this, but any general workstation capital replacements and vehicle replacements as required and kind of used by the building division to carry out the inspections, that is all built into it. So there is some contribution for asset management, and the management of the assets that you use to deliver that service is also incorporated into the cost that we've got. So we have our cost analysis, then we look at the revenue side of the equation. So we have our green bar is our building division revenues over the last 5 years, and the gold bar looks at the planning revenues and for the planning fees that we've got over the last 5 years. The building division, saw its peak during 21 and 22, and that's not dissimilar from what we see in a lot of other municipalities, kind of during the pandemic era. There's been a lot of housing construction. Things have kind of slowed off a little bit. So we do see that peak kind of in that 21, 22 years, and then kind of come down a bit. On the planning side, things have been, I would say, a little bit more static. You don't see as many peaks and valleys. You do see the same peak in 2022 revenues, but it's actually come back up to roughly around the same level now in 2025. The far bars on the right represent what the forecast is and what we're assuming in this particular planning period. And this is average revenues over the next 5 years. So in total, about $420,000 each year for both planning and building. On the building side, we are assuming a uptick in the level of activity on an average basis going forward, assuming there's going to be some increased activity for some of those developments that are relying on capacity within your treatment plant. And on the planning side, more of a kind of continuation of the good level of activity you've seen over the last couple years. So certainly kind of a level of activity that you've seen historically, but we are being a little bit more conservative and assuming that peak activity of 2022 would be the case on an average basis each year over the next 5 years. So a bit toned down from that. So just in terms of the part of the analysis itself is understanding what are the gaps and what's the difference between the cost on an average basis that we're looking at and what the revenues are and where the variance is in the cost of service. So the gold bar is our revenues from the previous slide. The costs are the green bar, both direct and indirect, again, from the previous slide. And the gap you see is the difference between what we're assumed to be generating in revenues under current rates and what the cost of delivering that service is. So there's a gap that exists, one for both planning and building. The building gap is a lot narrower than, I guess you can say, of the planning gap. There's much more of a gap on the planning side. Part of the reason, one, building divisions under the Building Code Act, there was a requirement for municipalities to track their costs and understand the cost of delivering services, track and contribute to reserve funds. So there were these types of activities done well over a decade ago that got a lot of municipalities kind of up to speed on the building division. That requirement was never really there on the planning side. So it's pretty astute that we're trying to do this analysis to understand what the true variance is and try to how to manage or better manage your services going forward. And there's a lot of time on the planning side as well that relate to work that's being done that sometimes just is from a competitive standpoint or just a general benefit of the municipality that doesn't get charged for. And that's why you sometimes see your planning division not necessarily always at 100% cost recovery, particularly for fee-based work, because there is a broader benefit to some of those applications. And some of the resident-driven fees are often discounted, like minor variance or consents, in order to kind of provide some of that benefit to some of the end users. But needless to say, our planning gap is we're running at about 33% cost recovery there, much higher on the building side, but nonetheless still both substantial gaps on both services. So the gap that we have there shows the gap at the division level, and because of the requirements of the Planning Act itself, we do need to calculate the rates at the application by application level, and we've calculated what the gaps are at the application type that you see. So there are differences in terms of cost recovery between official plan versus zoning bylaw versus your committee of adjustments for minor variance and consent versus site plan and so on. That's part of the requirements of the Planning Act and the way we have to calculate fees. So the increase that you see here won't be uniform across the board. The table shows what the existing fees are and then what the calculated full cost recovery fee is. And I guess just as a general statement itself, the fees, just based on the gap analysis that we saw, are going up across all fee types and at varying ranges. I'll go through this maybe in a little bit more detail when we show it against the benchmark, because it might provide some more context to it. But maybe just to give some examples of the magnitude, we're seeing official plan amendments for a major application going from $6,000, which is currently calculated at just over $22,000. Areas like your removal of the H, which is currently at $500, moving up towards $2,200. Your plan of subdivision, your base application around $5,000, moving upwards of $35,000. So they are fairly substantial increases in the rates. And again, that is just the maximum permissible, the fully calculated rates. That doesn't necessarily mean council has to adopt or endorse that. We can obviously make some adjustments based on those recommendations. Then on the building side, just looking at the full cost recovery analysis there based on the gap analysis. And this one I've coupled it with the benchmark of what other municipalities are charging in Simcoe County. The rate increase itself is around 48% for the building division in order to recover that gap. The far bottom rows is your township current and calculated rates. And then up from there is the average of Simcoe County and the average of North Simcoe, all the different communities. So there's certainly a lot of numbers on the page, and not to go through them all, but the flavor and what the output of this is that the calculated rates, when you look at a ground-related residential units, if implemented, would put the municipality on the top end of the Simcoe County comparators in terms of the fully calculated rate. Recognizing that the current charge that's in place is already kind of towards the average, maybe just above the North Simcoe average, but certainly in the realm of what's being charged, but there are obviously other communities that do charge more. On the non-residential side, the fully calculated rates are a lot more closer to the average, I guess you can say. They are above the Simcoe County average, but the full cost rates for most of the non-residential, even at the full cost recovery rate, would put you in the realm of what other municipalities are charging on the average. So you're certainly not the highest, but on the residential side, it would put you towards the top end of that spectrum. So, you know, recognizing that some of the fee increases here in order to kind of bridge that gap would be substantial, there are a few really key principles that council and staff have to consider when setting fee rates. And some of that goes beyond just the financial side of the equation, but that is an important one. And there is certainly a revenue shortfall that would arise from implementing less than full cost recovery rates, in which that service would continue to be subsidized by the tax base, which it currently is right now. So that difference is being put on the tax base in order to recover that delta. But recognizing that for some of these services, there is a general benefit to the municipality, whether that be on something like a zoning bylaw or an official plan review. When those applications come forward, it is about the benefit to the broader community itself. Competitiveness is a very important component here that council has to consider, and whether that falls in line with some of the longer term strategic objectives. Looking at the applicant side of it and their ability to pay the fees, and then also just understanding the reserve fund management and the taxation side of things, how that impacts the operating side and the budget books when you come forward each year. Part of this is the analysis itself is in kind of constant $20-26. So we do recommend that the fees themselves at minimum continue to be indexed on an average basis, on an annual basis, so at least in line with your CPI index, to make sure that the fees are keeping up with the effects of inflation. So I'll go through some of the kind of phase-in and implementation options considerations here. And these are just for context or illustration purposes. We've put in kind of 5-year phase-ins of the full cost recovery rates, and how that could look and what that means from both a revenue perspective as well as a fee perspective. The green bar looks at the full cost of service for building. The gold bar looks at the building revenues over that period, and effectively the phase-in schedule itself. The current fees are at, like I said, about 68% cost recovery, meaning that division is being subsidized by about $150,000 from the tax base. But if we were to inch those fees up towards full cost recovery over the period, moving up to 80% cost recovery by year 1, and then upwards of 95% by year 3, and then getting closer and closing the gap entirely by year 5, we see that our subsidy to the tax base obviously narrows, and we start to increase our revenues and get closer to the cost recovery. What that does to the rate, and just putting that on the residential perspective, just for comparison, where we currently are in the rate today at 1722, and then the maximum rate that we have at the calculated rate by year 5. We've put in what the Simcoe County maximum rate is, and then what the average of North Simcoe is. But effectively, you know, for the next couple years, you'll be certainly higher than the average, which you currently are right now, but you'll be well less than the maximum. You only kind of reach the maximum rate in the county by the 5th year, recognizing during that intervening period, those other communities are likely going to be indexing their rates at least at minimum, and second, they also might be undertaking a fee review. So we're kind of moving the municipality along the spectrum and trying to take a bit more of a balanced approach. Again, this is moving to 100% cost recovery. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's council's option, but this is just a way of doing it that could kind of mitigate the impacts over a longer period of time. Then looking at on the planning side, again, keeping with the same 5-year cost recovery, recognizing there's a bit more of a mountain on this one to climb, where the cost recovery is not as great as it is on the building permit side of things, but the planning division, again, about 1/3 of the cost being recovered to date. Sorry, about 25% of the cost being recovered to date, and we see the $330,000 shortfall. But if we go to kind of closer to cost recovery, and one of the things that we've done here is rather than going right to 100% cost recovery, we've built in that general benefit of the fees across the board. So we're only getting to 80% cost recovery by year 5. So by the end of the period, we'll be 80% cost recovery on that division, where unlike building, we were moving to 100%. You know, the structure of the phase-in can vary by application type. The end goal being 80%, but you'll see that we've started at different positions for each of the different application types themselves. So just to put maybe some of that into context, and we've kind of put a benchmark comparison in relative to other North Simcoe communities in the Simcoe County maximum. So the current rate, the gold bar here, the year 1 rate, if we were to move to the phase-in, is in, the current rate's in green, the year 1 rate's in gold, and the year 5 rate at the end of the phase-in is in red. And you see the Simcoe County, the Northern Simcoe average is the black line, and then the Simcoe maximum rate that's in force for each of those different application types is the dashed black line. So one of the immediate things that I can see here is that the current rates on the planning side, for all instances in this particular bucket of the 4 applications, are lower than the Northern Simcoe County, Northern Simcoe average rate. So there is at least an immediate opportunity here to start to think about increasing the fees, at least to get to closer to the average of what other communities are charging. And whether we take a measured approach to that and get to it over a 5-year period, or kind of get to that cost recovery, but even in year 1 for some applications, we might not get to the average, but by year 5, for example, in your zoning bylaw amendment major, we get to that average rate. In other instances, like your subdivision, we are much higher than the average rate, and it would be the kind of closer to the maximum rate that's in place in other municipalities. There's a separate set of fees here for temporary use, removal of the age, part lock control, consents, and minor variants. Again, same structure as the previous slide. For all the fees themselves that we're looking at here, the current rates fall below the average that is employed in other municipalities. With the phase-in and over the 5-year period, yes, in some instances will be above the average, but in others will actually still be right on the average or just below it. So again, different approaches can be taken for different fees here. But in this case, in all instances, we are still less than the maximum rate that's employed in Simcoe County. And again, that is in year 5, assuming that everyone else kind of doesn't do a thing over the next 5 years in terms of the kind of adjusting their rates. I think there was one more slide. Oh, so that kind of concludes the technical portion. I mean, this is probably maybe a little longer than you wanted to hear me talk about fees, but nonetheless, you know, we did want to give you the fulsome presentation of the results, some of the impacts, and what the benchmarks are. This information session was intended to be informative and to hear your feedback. Following this, we will take this back and discuss with staff on the next steps, primarily being the drafting of the report, which will release with the public notice for the public meeting. And then the bylaw passage would happen subsequent to that. So with that, I will end my presentation and open it up to council or the mayor for any questions.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. As mentioned, this is the first step, and we have a few more steps to follow, including a public meeting. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor LaChapelle.
Yeah, through the chair. In my thoughts in this whole scenario, once again, I find this difficult. The reason I find it difficult, we hear all this conversation about more housing, more this, more that. And all we do if a municipality and the government part is drive things up higher and higher and higher, make it difficult for young people to survive. And I understand the intent to doing this. I go back a long time with the mayor. I go back to Victoria Harbor days. For $500, you put a lot and build a house, and we never had any problems. Now, we're climbing the ladder so bloody high that people can't get to the top. And I have a problem with the whole scenario. I don't know where it's going to go. This is my just opinion. And I look at today's market and how people progress moving forward. charges now for municipality to put a lot on, like, I'm going through one in the municipality in Midland. I'm up to $300,000, and if I look at this scenario, it just keeps, where do we stop? I think governments now don't have a responsibility that they should have in trying to streamline this, and I understand your intent, Andrew, of this. I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the rest of council, but I'm having difficulty with this, I really do. If we're paying $4,000, we're going up to $22,000. We're only a small municipality. We got 11,000 people. We have a hard time driving interest in our area to bring people in. Like, we got responsibility to sewage plant. We got all kinds of things. I just see this as another deterrent to bringing people into this municipality. So that's my comments, and we'll wait for down the road and see where we take this. But I'm having a problem with this. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaChapelle, Councillor Larmont, and then Councillor Raymond, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I have to agree with Councillor LaChapelle. I have a huge problem with this as well. I think it's putting a huge burden on the housing industry and the affordability of homes. It's already out of control, thanks to what happened during COVID. And I think it's just too much of a financial burden. I mean, we have to find a way to make this lower for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Larmont. Councillor Raymond, please.
Thank you, through the chair. And first of all, thank you for the report, because, or what you presented so far, because for me it was an eye-opener. We take for granted, I think, sometimes, you know, when you break it without breaking it down, and this sort of opens it up a little bit better for us to understand. Having said that, my opinion, I don't like it whatsoever. I think it's trending in the wrong direction. I think we're not doing a service to trying to increase build in Tate Township if we adopt this. Further than that, I think we're still too far as it stands. And we have a lot of disgruntled people who can't afford to build, and they're getting frustrated. You know, the trade-offs between any of the four municipal groups that, you know, the partners that make up North Simcoe, you still end up with variances on, well, where's the money going to go? Is it going to go on to the taxes? Is it going to go on to development fees? You know, back and forth. Anyway, but it's just an opinion. I'm hoping that we're going to get a chance to review this further down the road, because I'm also going to be looking, I think, as council will probably be, for a report from staff as well, to give us an eye, because I would just prefer to see us trend in a different direction, is what I'm saying. You know, if our costs are that high, why are they that high? That's where I would come at. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Raymond. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Andrew, that was great. Do you know of any of the other local municipalities within the county that have actually done a review? It looks like Oro Medonte has, but I was just curious if any of the other municipalities have.
So through the mayor, for example, like town of Wasaga Beach just recently did one. Springwater has been pretty up to date on their fees. The town of Pantanguishene is in the midst or just released a report. So there's a few, and they're not as cyclical as a DC study, for example, because it's not required by legislation. But they do come up frequently, and Simcoe County is kind of in the process, as well as the county. They're doing a fee study as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I knew the county was doing theirs,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why I kind of threw it out there. Thanks,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. We're not trying to shoot the messenger, by the way. We understand where it's coming from. I guess the double whammy that we are facing is with respect to our development charges, which we've updated, and they're very high. So we're having some issues that way as well. I know at one time there wasn't a requirement for cost recovery. So that came into effect, and we're trying to keep as close to that as we can. And Councillor Raymond mentioned, why are we high? I looked at the other municipalities, and I'm questioning, why are they so low? Do you know what I mean? Like it's, how do we compare to them with Tiny, for example, where our building inspectors have a long way to go doing inspections and so on. So yeah, and then where are they in their studies too? And your one slide was very interesting, slide 12, and where you say some things to consider when you're setting the fees. Competitiveness is a big one for us because we're so close to our neighbors, and that's really who we compete against, our neighbors. So contractors, developers look very closely at how we compare if they're deciding where they're going to develop. So those are some of the challenges we're facing. But the report itself was very good, easy to follow, and had all the information that we need to go on and get some more information from staff, and then head off to the public meeting. So unless you have anything to add, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for having me up. Maybe just one closing comment. I'm not distant to the housing market right now and what's going on and the difficulty and the challenges in this, but there's also a municipal challenge at the same time of these are costs that you are incurring, and effectively any shortfall does get put to the tax base, and that balancing act is the hard part.
Exactly.
So part of the understanding of this study is to understand what those gaps are and how do we, on a go-forward basis, bridge it and be competitive at the same time.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Okay, council, no more questions? Okay. Andrew, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time to come out this evening. With that said, we do have two representatives here from the Benny Club, so I think we can proceed with that presentation. Council, we all know the Benny Club in Wabasheen and how important it is to the community and all the good things that the Benny Club does for the youth in not only Wabasheen, other parts of Tate Township, and I understand from some other municipalities as well. So Deputy Mayor and I had the pleasure of attending the 15th anniversary at the Benny Club clubhouse a little while back, and we mentioned that we would like to get the reps here to officially present them with a 15th year certificate. That's quite the accomplishment. So welcome, and is there anything that we'd like to get a photo op if we could, and wondered if there's anything that you'd like to add.
I just want to thank Tate Township for acknowledging us, and without Tate Township, and especially Brian Anderson and Barry Norris being in our area, the Benny Club would not exist.
Good.
Because when it first started, I looked for places to buy in order to have a youth group to make my son's wishes come true. And his wishes would not have come true without Tate Township, so I just want to thank you so much, and I'm hoping for another 15 years.
Yes, we are too. Yes, yeah. So with that said, I think Lacey's going to take a photo. So Lacey, do you want us just in front of the dais? Okay. Council, do you want to? Good to go? Okay, we're back in session. Next, we have Delbrook Group, redevelopment charges. Mehdi, is Victor attending, or is it just you tonight? Just yourself, welcome. Hope you didn't clutch your chest too many times during the previous one. I should mention as well that we were scheduled this evening. We had a group with a petition about motorized use on the Tayshore Trail. Mr. Rodney Robinson, they contacted our clerk and asked to be rescheduled to the June council meeting. So in case you're wondering why I'm not mentioning them. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier. Welcome, Mehdi.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, Your Worship, Mayor Walker and Member of Councils, thank you very much for the opportunity for me again to be in front of you to tell you a bit of more updates on our project. First of all, I want to thank the members of council, the staff, been very supportive, and specifically this development that we have been going through lots of ups and downs here. As the previous, I guess, presentation was talking about the increases in the permit fees. We are, we are feeling it everywhere now, and with what's happening with the economy, in the real estate in general, in our industry, everybody is feeling it very hard. But we, from Delbrook perspective, we have a commitment, we have this project, and we had great support from the township, and we are getting ready, to move forward. So the purpose for me to be here tonight, to first of all provide you an update of where we are and how we're going to progress with this project, and also give you a bit of update on the development charges. This is something that we have been on the council, I believe, last year, and again in staff prepared a May 13 staff report on where things are happening, and the provincial government and federal government is trying to see how they can come into the play and help. So by saying that, to start, first of all, we are planning to start the sales of this project in July of this year. This summer, we're going to open to market. So things are getting ready. We are just planning in terms of the sales office or sales center. It might be, taking time, but we are coming up with some other, having a trailer at the side to start the sales activities, and we are working with the local realtors here to help us to market this product. And we have our own, marketing office as well. And in terms of the draft plan conditions, our team, we have engaged Tatum Engineering. They are working with us right now. They're in touch with the staff as far as I know, and they're moving this along and to satisfy the conditions for draft plan. And we are just, the models are pretty much finalized, and we will be, in a couple of weeks, we will be in position to submit our building permit for our model house. And we are targeting to open to market for sales in summer of this year. And depending on the sales, how it goes, we are anticipating to be in position to start a construction in the spring of 2027. One of the key factors that made us to be able to move project forward in this bad market, as we all know, was this GST, HST relief. because in our pro forma, it was not working before. Now we see some hope that we can make it happen. Give you a bit of perspective on our pricing. When we start working on this project initially, what we were told from our marketing and realtor team that we should be able to market, sell the bungalows around $800,000 to $850,000, brand new bungalows on the 40-foot lots, and the price dropped to $750,000, $700,000, and now we are to the point that we want to go and start for our interior level bungalow at $659,000. As a matter of fact, I was just with Jim Hawk, Hawk team, and just a few hours ago, and we were discussing this, and he was thinking actually maybe we should drop it to $649 to make it, to be able to move this. So, and the cost is there. We already have, all the costs that we have incurred today for this, for the land itself, plus all the soft costs and all the carrying costs. And we still have a huge cost ahead of us in terms of the site servicing, the hard cost itself, and to manage it, to bring it, and there are different, lot of hidden costs as well here involved. Now, when you look at the DC charges that is being charged by Tay now, and between like a Tay Township, Simcoe County School Board, for a bungalow, it adds up to almost $78,000 today, right? So when we are looking at it from our perspective, we say, okay, if you are going to offer the house at $659,000 and the DCs are $78,000, ballpark, you're looking at 12% of the DC, 12% of our revenue goes down for the DC charges, right? Which is huge, right? Like it's very difficult for us to make it happen. It's gonna be difficult for our purchasers at the end of the day. Our goal is to make the houses ready, move forward, and go to market, sell and build the houses, have these people start occupying the houses. But the thing is, we have to pass some of these costs at some point. Somehow we have to pass it to the purchasers. The construction cost is not coming down with what is happening right now in the trade wars. The construction, the material cost is at shortfall, so we see challenging. Even though the work is slow, the trades are trying to beat on the work and try to get involved, but the cost of the supply is up there. And with the current fuel cost, is just going to add up. Like we expect it's going to be actually more in a few months' time. Now, for townhomes, it's a bit reduced, about $60,000. What we are currently thinking and asking and seeking to see how we can work with Tay Township on this project, we have 11 single detached units on Simcoe Avenue, which we are going as a first phase to market, right? And hopefully we can start marketing and selling this. And we reviewed the staff report that was prepared. It was very nice, detailed report. We appreciate that. And in one of the requests that we wrote to you guys before was whether if there is possibility that we can just eliminate the DC charges on the first 11 units. That was one of the requests that we had. Now, the other option that we have been also working on is the new provincial federal partnership of the 50% discounts, which I give credit to council and staff that nobody knows. Even I'm talking with the town of Midland, nobody knows how that implementation is going to be or how the municipalities will be qualified to receive those funds. So there is no procedure for that yet established. But I understand that they are saying that, if there is an infrastructure plan already out there, province is going to step in. And it seems that they want to bring it on to the point that province will be responsible for all the infrastructure costs at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen. But even if we take that 50% into perspective, that is going to be much more reasonable for us. It's bringing about between 6 to 7% of our revenue goes towards the DC charges. Now, there are different relief programs out there, we need, the municipal partnership opportunity, immediate housing starts, long-term municipal benefits. And talking about long-term municipal benefits, we just, wanted to have this slide here. We just did a rough calculations on the property taxes that will be available to the municipality when this project is finished from the end users, right? So on average, between the number of units we have, it's going to generate anywhere, probably around $150,000 annually for Tay Township. So when you factor that within 10 years' time, it's about $1.5 million that's going to be generated just by doing this, and there are going to be, for sure, going to be extra increases in the property taxes as well at some point. Now, and this funding is going to help with the support of the future municipal services anyway. One of the things that I have been always, trying to emphasize is when we purchased this specific old Port McNichol school, there were services, and there are still services allocation for this property, for this specific property. And I understand we have problem with Victoria Harbor with no capacity at all. Like, you need to do that upgrade. But we are like one of the very few developers here, builder. We are pushing forward. We want to start this project. This is going to be a role model project for the rest of the projects we have in the county now, because we have, we got the Little Lake project in Midland. We got the Palm Beach project that is coming up, and we really want to push this one, sell it off, and start construction. So, looking at all that, we are just thinking it's fair for us, because with the anticipation that we had that, listen, we're going to have the cost, we will have a services here, we should not be worried. Our DC charges back then was about $35,000 per door back in 2021. So these are all the calculations that we did back then to make sure that this project is viable. So what we are thinking, this is the ready-to-go project, a shovel-ready-to project. It would be very beneficial for us. It would be a great help. If you guys can somehow come up with a plan, we understand it's too much to ask for charging us like nothing for the first 11 houses. That would be perfect scenario for us. We can try to be more aggressive. And by all means, we can assure that this savings is going to be passed to the purchaser. So there's going to be, that's going to help us with our reductions. But at least we like to see that 50% discount on this development, plus the collection of the DCs to be wait until the occupancy permit and not at the building permit stage. That saves also a lot in terms of the cash flow for us as a developer. And there is no problem in for recouping that cost at the end, because the municipality, basically, there's going to be some sort of agreement between us and municipality that DCs will be collected at the end when the house is occupied. So this is just a summary. We always appreciate all the support we have received from you guys, and I think this is one more support we are asking, just to to be able to push this and move forward. So thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mehdi. Council, any questions, comments? I don't see any. Mehdi, thanks for the information. As I mentioned to the previous delegation, we do recognize our DCs are high compared to our competitors, as it was presented in the slides. I don't know where those other municipalities are in DCA studies and how up to date they are. But certainly we'll take your request under consideration. And as with the rest of the province, we're anxiously waiting, as you are, for some direction from the province as to how that 50% reduction is going to work for the DCAs. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully that 50% reduction also includes school and county.
Yes,
that it's not just municipal,
that's
but
right.
That's your understanding, right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
The school, I'm not sure, but the county, our
that's-
understanding, the county should be part of that 50% discount as
Okay,
well. Yeah,
good.
Your worship, yeah.
Okay,
All right, thank you
you,
very
Mehdi.
much. I appreciate it.
safe trip home.
Thank you.
Council. That brings us to our consent list. Are there any items in the consent that a member of council wants pulled? Not seeing any. I have a motion that reads that the consent list for May 27th, 2026, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as resolutions of council. Mover and seconder, Councillor Talbot, Councillor LaChapelle, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. That brings us to staff reports. And we have a report from our treasurer, CS 2026-042, re-standing grants follow-up. Madam Treasurer, is there anything you'd like to add to your presentation, to your report?
Thank you. So the report kind of outlines it all. This came from a request from yourself regarding the standing grants we have, and what staff is proposing with this is that we'll use the remaining funds from the Grants and Donations Committee to support what the committee, the Grants and Donations Committee wanted to support the two Legions and the 4 Lions clubs. And staff is also proposing that staff will bring forward a standing grant policy for each term of council to review and approve the standing grants for their term.
Okay, good. Thank you. Council, any questions, comments? Not seeing any. So with that, I have a motion that reads that that item CS 2026-042 dated May 27, 2026 regarding standing grants follow-up be received, and that council approves 2026 funding in the amount of $1,000 to the following committee groups from the Grants and Donations Committee: Victoria Harbour Legion, Wabashine Legion, Port McNicoll Legion, Port McNicoll Lions, Baxter Ward Lions, Victoria Harbour Lions, and that council directs staff to bring forward a standing grants policy to provide modest financial and stability support to long-standing community groups to recognize the contributions they make to the community with the intent that recipients would be reviewed and approved each term of council. And that council directs staff to bring forward a revised grants and donations policy outlining that groups approved under the standing grants policy will be ineligible to apply or receive grants under this program. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor, Seconder, Councillor Larma, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. With respect to the delegation follow-up, I think in both cases we're going to be looking for some staff input with respect. Well, we'll be heading to a public meeting as well on the planning fees. So, is there a staff report that comes prior to that, Madam CAO, or?
Thank you, Worship. I think from staff's perspective, I guess hearing the discussion around the table, I think that it appears that council is of the mind that full cost recovery for building and planning as well is not something that council wants to consider. So I guess we need to have an understanding and how that comes to fruition, just from a perspective of what does council feel comfortable with as far as an increase of any sort or not. And I know there was reference to looking at our actual costs that we currently have internally and seeing if there's ways for potential efficiencies and that type of thing as well, which is something that from a staff's perspective we've been talking about.
Right.
So certainly we can maybe bring something forward on, based on discussions that we've had from a staffing perspective on what we think might be more palatable, and go from there and look to council for direction from that standpoint, if that's...
Yeah, like I as you and I had a little chat, and when I looked at it and looked at the other municipalities, I can't imagine where we're high. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if we're overstaffed or we're paying big bucks, and activity is reasonably close. Where I thought we would be higher is the geographic nature of the municipality, where the inspectors have to travel so far to do an inspection. But Tiny is the same way, but they're still lower, and I think that's one of the reasons the deputy mayor said, where are the others in these studies? Certainly, it's not something we have to do right away anyway, right? So, and there are a couple in there that might make sense, the smaller ones, because $500 doesn't go very far on some of these things, so a couple of those ones didn't seem bad, but when you get into these subdivisions and we're trying to attract or minor variances, it just seems to be really hard to swallow as to being able to charge that. So, Councillor Raymond.
Thank you. Through the chair, the other issue too is, it's not necessarily a cart before the horse, but I don't know if I'm ready to engage the public in something that we're not 100% sold on what direction we're going to go.
Yeah.
Because it would be more of an alarmist type of scenario. So I'm sure the paper will follow up with what happened tonight in our
Yeah.
discussions. So as far as that part's concerned, I think, like you say, perhaps let's see what staff have to say on this, because I think it generated a lot more questions. I know I wrote down a lot of questions that'll be more for staff than for those guys today.
Yeah. Does that sound reasonable, Madam CAO?
Sure. Certainly, Andrew, being in attendance, he was heard firsthand from council. So we, as staff, can follow up with him as well, and then work together to come back with something for council.
Yeah, like,
to look at prior to
one of the
public.
options they mentioned was a phased-in approach, and I think whatever we decide, if there are increases to any of them, the phased-in approach would probably make the most sense. But not to the amount that they were, and they're not suggesting it. Like he said, that's just where we are, so. And if you could do that, and in the interim, if council could look at those individual charges and see if there's any, okay, I'm okay with this one, or I'm not with this one, or, and we'll be able to have some discussion. Councillor LaChapelle.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I just found it just interesting. I mean, when I seen the bottom line, it said 25, where, and, you know, they're over 14 and 16. And I looked at the size of it, Your Worship, and I really have a strong, why that differential? It's like, I mean, when I looked, they're proposing 25, and everybody else is 14 and 15, and they're the hub, like, talking about Midland development, all that stuff. We ain't there, man.
Yeah.
Like, we got to struggle for what we got, and I mean, is it more of a discouraged for people to come? I don't know. This is what I'm so confused how this is going to move forward.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's a certain staff size and building permit activity in that's just an economy of scale.
Yes.
And we're not there.
No.
We're smaller.
you're
So,
right.
Deputy Mayor.
So I find, just maybe some clarification, we're paying this already, correct?
Correct.
So whether we increase the recoverable part from that person, we're still paying for it. So to get to 100% recoverable, that's what the charges that Andrew's presented to us.
And I understand that, but as an applicant coming in, where we are today, like, and I understand the intent, your Deputy Mayor. My problem is that
Scare people.
when I look at the one thing, it said 4,000, it goes to 22. That's just one step. How many things apply to the permit? It could be another 30 or 40,000 on an individual to build a house in Tay Township. And this is where I get confused. I really don't know how it plays into our whole scheme of things. I just find that it's a deterrent when we're only 11,000 people and we're not bounding out 100. I don't know. I think with Ted, it's like there's a lot of thought I have to put into that. I got to really divulge into this thing. I read it twice yesterday. I still couldn't understand how that's going to be a benefit to us. I think it's more of a detriment to it than a benefit.
Yeah, and I think that one thing too is, before this came into place, it was just part of the municipal staff. And once this did come into place, then the municipalities started looking at things like office space and things like that. So those are rolled in there where previously they weren't. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just one thought, and you're right, Your Worship, and it's just all rolling out here. That is the true cost. We're not overstaffed. Let's get that straight, as far as I'm concerned. The efficiencies that the CIO has they've looked at it. So this is a true cost, and it's put back onto the ratepayers to turn around supplement to try and get the building fees. So maybe just as a suggestion, and that would be staff come back with maybe 3 or 4 different options. If we turn around 100%, we already knows it. Staying stable is the other option. A couple other options, whether we bump it 20, 30, 50%, or decide a thing. That would be my suggestion.
Just
And the other thing that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The other thing to consider is if they're too high, they're not going to build. If they do build, then at least we're looking at tax revenue. Now, Mehdi,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he meant to use that for that particular thing, but when he said it, I thought, yeah, like if you don't have the building, you're not going to get the taxes or the water rates or the sewer rates, so.
And this way, it just want to add to you, through to you, just to touch on what Paul said, like, when I seen that, like, the meeting, like, is that premature until I listened to us up here, like, we really don't know which direction we want to go. Why we want to have an open, I mean, are we trying to get input from, I guarantee you we're going to get opposition from a developer or anybody that's selling a house. So is that premature having that meeting?
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, council would have to agree on, here's the rates we're going to charge, and then go to public meeting, and then we would defend it at the public meeting.
Okay.
If we aren't satisfied, then we don't go to public meeting until such time as we are, so. Is that right, Madam CAO?
Yes, you're correct. Andrew did indicate that there would be a public report that would be prepared for the public meeting.
Right.
So prior to that, definitely, we would need some
Yeah.
direction from
Yeah.
council.
And it may be that report, like if council decided they're going to do, say they were going to go with everything he said, there'd be a report. If we decided to go with 50% of it or something, then that report would probably mention that we were only going to go to 50%. So they'd have all that information in there, but there's no sense going there if we don't know ourselves what we were going to do. Yeah.
Okay.
And that, just so you know, that is kind of the intent there too. The presentation didn't indicate a public meeting date or follow-up, just because he anticipated that there would be some discussion had at the table,
Yeah.
and then some further work to be done before that time period.
Okay. Okay. Council good? Okay. Correspondence, whoops.
Your worship, I just, could we do follow-up on Delbrook's delegation?
I think the same thing, we're just looking for staff reports. Now, I know you have got back to Delbrook on a couple of requests, but there is a couple of different ones there, I think, that we could get some input on. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. So you may recall that there was kind of an initial request from Delbrook, which our treasurer had responded to with a detailed report based on kind of their requests and the recommendation from staff at that point. And then subsequently, Delbrook provided some additional inquiries requests with respect to development charges still. And then our planner created that report that just came on to the Committee of the Whole agenda. So at this point, I think any of the information that we have in our hand at this point has already been put out in those 2 reports to answer his questions. As he mentioned, we're still waiting to find out what is going to come out of that provincial, federal collaboration with respect to development charges, and whether we will be chosen. As my understanding, there's only certain municipalities that will be chosen for that. But again, it was just preliminary. And that is where the potential for 50% DC's reduction. And he did request the 100% DC reduction or no DCs in his initial 11 units, I think he said. And it does speak to that, I believe, in Emmy's report. And there are, and in the report speak to it too, if it is considered affordable housing or affordable apartment units, because there is a rental component, I believe, then there's an additional enhancements, but I don't think that development is looking at those things at this point. So they would not be eligible for those. So I'm not sure from a staff's perspective if there's any new information that wasn't captured in those two previous reports.
What about the waive, what about the waive the DCs until occupancy? Was that one that he had?
He had mentioned that, I believe, both times, and both Emmy, our treasurer, and Todd had indicated in their reports kind of what that process looks like, and I believe there was a change with respect to one of them. There are certain parameters that would allow that, and then how the installments are had, and then depending on the development, one, there would be interest accrued, and the other one, that was a recent change in legislation that there wouldn't be any interest accrued, and that's identified in that most recent report, I believe.
Okay, I think we, I don't know about the rest of the council, but maybe take some time and take a look at those reports again. And I'd like to get specific answers back to him, even if it's again with respect to his delegation here tonight. Councillor LaChapelle.
Seeing that we're discussing, just to kind of go on record, just for clarification to Mr. Barrio, I mean, the DCs are based on the areas like Port Monaco and Victoria. They don't intertwine. I mean, we're still expecting to find out what happens with Victoria Harbor with the plant, and that's going to be determined, the DC charges, on what we get from them and what the costs are. So there will be reduction, but that could be only this area. Does that affect also Port Monaco?
I think they're combined.
They are combined.
So my thought is that, I mean, when we talk about a saving potential, it will be determined what we hear from. So is it something that notification to the individual on a wait-see thing, because he wants to start in July, but we may not hear anything until we get a final quote. And before we were basing on 60 million, and if it comes in at 35, 40, that will create a reduction, will it not?
Yeah, and the DCs are based on 50%. We didn't carry the full price through the DCs.
That's my question I was going to ask. What percentage
So-
did we base it on?
Yeah, 50.
But having said that, I mean, $80-some thousand is pretty high for. So there's something to look at when we're talking about, if we're doing 50%, why not do 50% again on the other one? So if it's reduction, food for thought, that's all.
Yeah, I think the staff, when they looked at the DCs, they included it as if we got the grant, right?
Correct.
And, yeah, so the fact that we got the grant, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, great, now we're going to also be able to reduce our DCAs, but
yeah.
staff had already thought about that, so.
Okay.
Anyway, I think, Councillor Raymond, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just quickly, I think we owe it to ourselves to try and come to a positive conclusion for Dell Group. He's worked so hard to build in Port McNichol. And let's be honest, in Tate Township, we need building. So,
Could we have like an item at our next committee meeting to discuss it? Their request, and that would give us time to go back, look through the reports. Staff gives them any time to do anything they want to provide. And Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, my only comment is I get what he's asking, but it's out of our hands, as far as I'm concerned, unless we're gonna go to the taxpayer to turn around and say, look, we'll allow you to turn around and build, but we'll turn around and have to bump up our percentage for him to get covered. To me, it's all back at the province. Not to say I don't want to see staff waste time, but I think we've answered it at this point. That's how I see it. I think it's great. He indicated that he's moving forward. Sounds like now it's 2027 before he will contemplate building. That's what I got. So I don't know. I just, I get staff. They've already prepared all these reports, so I'm not too sure where else we can go, but I'm game to have a discussion at the next committee.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the staff recreate the reports. We've got the reports. CIO had mentioned that they are looking some efficiencies, so if indeed they do find anything there, that's fine, and then we can discuss it and get him an answer, so he knows.
Yep.
And it might be the very same answer he got before, but.
So part of the direction from the May report related to this matter was that the report be forwarded to Delbrook. So I'm sure he's already seen it, but we'll certainly follow up with him to make sure that he has this and the previous report, so all of that information should be in his hands as well.
Right.
And then we can, as you suggest, have something on the next agenda.
Yeah. I thought he referenced that he did have it. Did he not? I think he said thank you for it or something, but anyway. Okay, sounds good. Madam Clerk, you're good. Council's good? 9.1, item pulled, and it's correspondence, Township of Essa, letter to the Premier for authority of Simcoe County to appoint its warden. And that was pulled by Councillor Raymond. Councillor Raymond, floor is yours.
Thank you, through the chair. So here we are again. I pulled this one because, I mean, I think everybody has to try really hard to stop this from happening. And I just wonder if we have the appetite to issue a letter either supporting this or our own letter to the same effect.
Just based on what went on at the county last session, which was Tuesday, right? Yesterday. Yeah.
I didn't get your email yet. So.
It's all a fog. We did discuss it. The legislation has passed.
Of course.
And the way it's worded is that the province will appoint a warden. The next section is, in the event the province does not appoint a warden, the warden shall be appointed by the municipality, by the council of the next term. So, not this council, that county, but the 16 new county councilors would appoint the warden if the province doesn't. So the county has made, sent a letter, the warden was down there suggesting that we much prefer to appoint the warden, but if the province insists, we're suggesting strongly that that appointment be someone from Simcoe County. So they have some of the background and knowledge. So certainly if council wants to send a letter off to the province, or we can do that.
I personally, it's my floor. No, personally, I don't think we have to do the letter now that, you know, thank you for the update. I appreciate that. Let's just hope that they don't take the time to appoint the warden and just move on.
Yeah, I had really hoped that they would have made that decision, said, okay, county, you can appoint the warden. The existing county council will make that appointment before the start of the new term. That way, if there's somebody that wanted to run for warden that also was going to run for mayor somewhere, they run for mayor, they get in, and then they're appointed warden, and then that municipality has to have another election. And I know clerks like elections, but still. So, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and just to further with what the mayor's just indicated, that's the wish of the county. During the interpretation, one of the key parts was the province may, they didn't say shall. So there's a variance there. They could do it, but they're after, and the warden has sent the letter, so. And along with a number of the other regions have sent letters in requesting that they have the first opportunity to pick somebody, so.
Yeah, I just don't know what the rationale behind that is. Who knows, they may have a plan, but, anyway. So, you good, Councilor Aaron? Okay, thank you. Okay, notices of motion, we have none. Council announcements. Anyone got anything to say? Councilor Raymond? All right.
Just want to bring everybody up to date. Sorry, through the chair. I just want to bring everybody up to date. The Soapbox, Paul Spencer Memorial Soapbox Derby had 39 kids this year. It is the largest number we've had since we sort of brought it back in 2017. The end result is that every car has to be rebuilt for next year. I got text messages sent to me. Text messages were sent to me. I had to step out for about an hour, and I got text message sent to me saying, "What are we going to do? There's no more carts." So they had to declare, it was a fair way of doing it, but they declared a winner at the end. So the other big news is Port McNichol has a new drugstore. My drugstore has performed a soft opening, and they are now taking in prescriptions. They are selling stuff. They also have Meatland lockers at the back.
Oh, really?
So that's an innovative way to do it. I went in and met the owner, and they're going to have a hard opening within the next couple of weeks, and I asked him to provide me with the date. All of council is going to be invited to the hard opening, and I thought maybe we could provide them with a welcome to taste certificate or something along those lines.
Sure.
So as soon as I find out, I'll communicate to the clerk and we'll spread it out.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. That's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, through the chair. The Seniors Advisory Committee is having, on June 9th, an information session for seniors. Typically, we have speakers, but we're not going to this time. We're going to, yeah, so we're going to have, have seniors tell us what they would like, instead of us continually every year having the same type of talks, asking what they want us to do in the future.
Good. Sounds interesting. Councillor Talbot, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Just to add on to Councillor Raymond, I also heard that they may have physicians come in to my drugstore. So anyway, that would be really a wonderful opportunity for some people that live in our area, right? So
Sure.
anyway, like not right away, but it's in the works, I think, so that's good.
Good. Good.
Correction, Your Worship. It's M&M Meats lockers.
Oh,
not-
okay.
Not Meatland, so M&M
Okay.
Meats.
Okay.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll just be quick. Numerous events attended, and, but two highlighted ones. We just did the Volunteer Appreciation Awards. So just shout out to all those that do volunteer. The other one's Severn Sound Environmental Association. We had our Environmental Championship Awards last week, so that announcement should be coming into the paper shortly. I didn't bring the actual award winners tonight, so thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Very quickly, the Tay Student Employees Onboarding, I attended that. Looks like we got another great group of students. I attended the Smile Cookie Decorating at the Wabashine Tim's with other local mayors, with the proceeds going to Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Huronia, so that was nice. I attended a joint ATV ride with the ATV club from Tay and Baxter, and it was with respect to the agreement that they've come to with the snow riders for use of the Snow Riders Trail, so that was very nice. I was asked to participate in the MCC Executive Director Selection event, and that went very well, and the announcement, I believe, has been made as to the new CEO. SSC Awards, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, and also Porterama Citizen Award Night was very good, very well attended, and of course the parade. And really good participation in the parade and good crowds there, and finally we had good weather for it. So, and the group, the Porterama Committee, really did a super job. There's all kinds of activities for kids and different events. It was really well done, so congratulations to that committee. Okay, that brings us to a closed session, which I expect will be 10 minutes, most. Okay. So with that said, I have a motion that council retire to a closed session at 8:26 PM under authority of the Municipal Act, Section 239, Sub 2, Sub B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And this has to do with the Seniors Advisory and Wabashing Recreation Committees. Mover and seconder, Councillor Talbot, second by Councillor LaChapelle. All in favor? That is carried. So Katie, if we could stop the live stream and Okay, council. We are back in open session, and during the closed session, we received a confidential report, CS 2026-045, regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, Seniors Advisory Committee, and Wabashin and Port Recreation Committees, and provided direction to staff accordingly. And now just carrying on from the council announcement matter, now that we're finished in camera. The other thing that was a huge success was the Meet the Fleet. The weather wasn't the best, but there's a great turnout. Lots of vehicles and demonstrations. Staff did a great job. There was a lot of staff there, and a lot of people. They had the bike draw this week, and 2 little guys picked up their brand new bikes. And then I think it's Friday is the decision will be made on the coloring contest. So there'll be a winner announced there as well. But we had a real good turnout. All of our equipment. We had the fire department there. We had NT Power there. OPP was there. So it was a great turnout. Councillor LaChapelle, please.
Yeah, that's true. It was a good day and the weather sucked, but it's all right. But I have one request of staff. And I think I made it to some of our staff members, like, can we have apple fritters next year?
And I believe, Madam CAO, on our website, there's some videos posted of the event. So, yeah, it was really good. Anything to add, any of the staff? Mr. Barrio, thank you for all the guys, all the equipment down there. Chief, thank you. Madam Treasurer, trying to collect taxes on site was appreciated. Madam Clerk was trying to get people to run, and when the rain started, they started running. No, they had the thing there for the election as well, and signing up for fire permits, I think, even, right? Or what were they signing up for?
Boat launch permits, I believe.
Oh, boat launch, okay, yeah. Boat launch permits. Okay. That brings us to bylaws. And I have a resolution that reads that bylaw number 2026-20, 2026-21, 2026-22, and 2026-23 be enacted as bylaws of the Township of Tay. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Norris and Councillor Larmois, all in favor? That carries. Confirmation bylaw. That bylaw number 2026-24, being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the May 27, 2026 council meeting, be enacted as bylaw of the Township of Tay. Mover, Councillor Talbot, seconded by Councillor LaChapelle, all in favor? That carries. Adjournment. That this regular meeting of council adjourn at 8:36 p.m. Moved by Councillor Larmois, seconded by Councillor Raymond. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. Good.